Brazilian elites are essentially saying, of course, there's too much power in his hands. Of course, he's exceeding all legal limits. But the danger of Bolsonaro's movement is so extreme, it's so criminal that we have to allow this judge basically dictatorial powers. And this is always the formula of every tyrannical regime everywhere. We know you like your rights. Usually we'll give them to you. But right now, there's a threat posed to your safety, this is the health of our nation, of our homeland, that simply doesn't allow ordinary rights to exist. What is happening in Brazil, and this has long been true, is a step beyond. And the reason, as I say, I always want to report on Brazil is not just because Brazil is a massive country with geostrategic importance, the second largest country in the hemisphere, et cetera. It is a part of the democratic world. Brazil is still ostensibly a democracy. And I can assure you that all of the censorship actions that have been undertaken in Brazil, which are a step or two ahead of even Western Europe, are being closely watched in those European allies and in the United States to see how far those countries can go as well. Every time there's a disinformation conference or a hate speech conference or a combating online harm conference, they invite all these Brazilian judges and all of these Brazilian think tank experts and all these Brazilian prosecutors and experts who are all cheerleaders of the censorship regime to come and talk to these fancy conferences in Berlin and Paris and Amsterdam and Rome and Spain and Portugal about exactly what it is that Brazil is doing because the EU wants to copy it. There's an article in the outlet that is called American Quarterly. There you see it on the screen, Brazil's most powerful judges in the spotlight again. And this is a magazine that is not at all on the left. If anything, it's sort of a centrist magazine. And the article was published today. And it says, quote, an escalating clash with Elon Musk and damaging revelations in the press are intensifying a long-running debate about whether Alexandre de Moraes is too powerful. Now, the press revelations that this article is referring to is the reporting I've been doing with Folha of São Paulo, the largest newspaper in Brazil, where we obtained a massive database of information, 6 gigabytes worth of messages and audios and other documents exchanged between the highest levels of Moraes' chambers among his aides that we've been reporting and revealing and disclosing, much to his extreme anger. So this article talks about the conflict with X as well as the reaction to our reporting. Quote, Moraes prevented highway police from stopping buses full of voters in an area of Brazil dominated by Lula's supporters. He also banned social media accounts of prominent figures who speculated the election had been stolen and went after officials who failed to prevent the January 8th riot in Brasilia, even suspending the governor of Brazil's federal district from his job for 3 months. Moraes banned the social media accounts of right-wing influencers such as Rodrigo Constantino and Paulo Figueiredo for allegedly spreading COVID-19 misinformation and casting doubt on the Brazilian electoral system. He also banned the accounts of department store chain owner and right-wing influencer Luciano Hang, allegedly for agitating a coup in a pro-Bolsonaro message group. Now, let me just stop there. Luciano Hang is a multi-billionaire. He owns a huge series of department stores, a big character in Brazil. On Twitter alone, he had something like 10 million followers. On other social media outlets, he had as many, if not more. And he was a vocal supporter of Jair Bolsonaro in the 2022 election, a very influential one. And this judge, obviously doing everything he could to prevent Bolsonaro's election, just banned his social media accounts, closed them, ordered them shut to prevent him from communicating with millions of people. They remain shut to this day, even though Luciano Hang has never been accused of a crime. Quote, blogger Allan dos Santos, in self-imposed exile in Florida, had his passport revoked after calling for the dissolution of the STF and being accused of involvement in a, quote, organized crime network that operates through monetized videos online. Quote, right now he's protecting democracy, and I think it's a very necessary thing, said Roberta Braga, executive director of the Digital Democracy Institute of the Americas, a nonprofit aimed at the digital information environment in Latin America. Quote, but you could see a world in which someone else in his role doing something in a different context would generate a lot of problems. This is the issue. Brazilian elites are essentially saying, of course, there's too much power in his hands. Of course, he's exceeding all legal limits. But the danger of Bolsonaro's movement is so extreme, it's so criminal that we have to allow this judge basically dictatorial powers. And this is always the formula of every tyrannical regime everywhere. We know you like your rights. Usually we'll give them to you. But right now there's a threat posed to your safety, the health of our nation, of our homeland, that simply doesn't allow ordinary rights to exist. 2016 was the turning point. That was when European and American elites concluded they couldn't control people's thoughts, as evidenced by, first, the British decision to withdraw from the EU by ratifying Brexit, and then even more traumatically, from the perspective of Western liberal elites, the decision to vote for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton and make Donald Trump president of the United States. And when they saw that, they decided that our media outlets that used to control how people think, the information they get, the kinds of opinions to which they're exposed, are no longer the gatekeepers. They lost their monopoly to the internet, to social media. And the only option we have for remaining in power to continue to be able to propagandize people and keep them in a closed information system is if we start implementing systems and justifying rationale for controlling the internet every bit as rigidly as we control large standard corporate media outlets, where most views don't get into those outlets ever. Most dissidents are never heard from. And since then, this has been a progression that is now manifesting in, I wouldn't call it yet its final form, unfortunately, but a much graver one than we've seen before. The Guardian in March of 2022, at the very start of the war in Russia, quote, Russia blocks access to Facebook and Twitter. The move to block Facebook and Twitter comes as the government passed a bill that criminalizes, quote, fake news reports against the war. What the Guardian forgot to mention was that the EU also banned Russian state media from being platformed by anybody. If you are somebody who has a social media platform and you want to give people the ability to listen to RT or Sputnik, it's against the law in the EU to do it, which is why Rumble's not available in France. Now, speaking of Rumble, the platform of Rumble is unavailable both in Brazil and France. So if you try to access Rumble while in Brazil and France and you don't use a VPN, what you get is the following, quote, and I've tried it in both countries. Quote, because of Brazilian or French government demands to remove creators from our platform, Rumble is currently unavailable in Brazil and France. We are challenging these demands and hope to restore access soon. So you see this rapidly escalating, unfolding, extremely menacing scheme of censorship, which is you either remove every dissident, every idea that we don't like, that we deem false, that we deem harmful, or we will, in the case of France, imprison you and your executives the minute you step foot into the EU, or we'll just block your entire platform from being available in our country at all, and we will only allow those platforms that maintain a closed system of information for our citizens to hear and say only what we think they should be hearing and saying. This is happening in the democratic world, the ostensibly Western democratic world. I cannot do anything more in terms of words to express how extreme, how severe, and how dangerous this trend is. We could see it coming for several years now, and it is here.